Hi fellow word wranglers, Ali here. I'm an editor and book coach and I'm here to help you tell your story your way. I really believe that the book that's in your heart, whether that's a romance or a fantasy, young adult or even a memoir, is there for a reason, and my aim is to help you get that book out of you and onto the page. And today we're going to be talking a bit about imposter syndrome, which I think assails all writers at some point. So let's see if I can help you move through that. So my first tip for dealing with imposter syndrome: stop saying you're not a writer. Now, many moons ago, and I do mean many moons ago, I think about 30 years, I went to my first ever writing group. And when I met the group leader, he said to me, "Oh, hello, you're a writer." And I very humbly said, "Well, I hope to be one day." And he stared at me and he said, "No, you write things down, don't you? You're a writer." And I kept that with me, and I want you to keep it with you too. If you write things down, you are a writer. You might be a writer who wants to improve their craft. You might be a writer with writer's block. You might be a writer who's not writing as much as they would like to. But if you are creating worlds with your words, you are a writer. Don't set yourself up to feel bad by telling yourself you won't be a writer until you're officially published or you have so many reviews or so many sales, because then you're just setting yourself up to feel bad and making it more difficult to actually do the writing. So stop that, okay? If you're writing creatively, no matter what you think of what you're producing, you are a writer. Start catching yourself saying you're not a writer and stopping it, okay? So my second tip for dealing with imposter syndrome is stop comparing your first draft to other people's finished work. Because it's so easy to read a book, especially a really good book by an author you really like, and go, "Oh no, I'll never be able to do that." But that's like when you see someone on Instagram and, you know, they're like lounging in the jacuzzi and everything's great, the light's perfect, their hair's perfect, the kids are well behaved. You don't see the actual real life where, you know, the kids were running around screaming and everybody was late and their hair was frizzy. You're not seeing that. You're only seeing the polished picture that they want you to see. And it's like that with writing. When you look at a novel by, you know, an established author, you're looking at years of practice. You may be looking at somebody who's like, you know, taken a writing degree or loads of classes, somebody who's had a lot of professional editing, and you're comparing that to your first draft, or you're comparing their 15th book to your first book. That is a surefire way to give yourself imposter syndrome. So please stop doing that, because you can't compare the two. It really is apples and oranges. Also, comparing styles doesn't work. You know, you've got to rate your style that really resonates with you. If you start comparing yourself to other authors and what they're doing, you will start feeling terrible about your work, because you're human and that's what the human brain likes to do. Stop comparing. If you catch yourself comparing, go do something else, not even necessarily writing related. Take the dog for a walk, go have a cup of tea or coffee if you're not British like me. Whatever it is, stop yourself from comparing, because you're not doing yourself any favours, okay? So my third tip for dealing with imposter syndrome is just to realise that no matter what you write or how fantastic it is, somebody will like it and somebody won't. You literally cannot please all of the people all of the time. That's impossible, and that's not something you should ever want to happen, because people have different tastes in books. Your book won't be for everybody, and that's great, because it means you've got a unique voice and something to say that will only appeal to some people. Don't get yourself all caught up thinking about who's going to like and dislike your book. That comes later, and you don't even have to concern yourself with it that much. Concern yourself with getting your book written. That's your thing that you need to be focusing on. You can pick any book. You can pick something that is like universally loved, universally hated, something that you personally loved, a book you personally didn't like. Go on Amazon or Goodreads, take a look at the reviews. There is going to be a mix. No matter what you pick, there's going to be a mix of "this was great, I loved this was fun, this was the worst book I ever read, this was a waste of paper." So it doesn't matter what you write. Somebody will always love it. Some people will always not love it. So write for you and let the rest take care of themselves. So my fourth tip for beating imposter syndrome actually comes from my past career before I was a book editor and coach. I did a lot of work as a copywriter. I started back in 2008, And I would often get imposter syndrome as a copywriter. I would look at other copywriters' work and think, oh, will I ever be able to be as good as that? Or, you know, maybe I'm not doing that well at this. So I know how you feel with imposter syndrome because I've 100% been there. And something that helped me a lot was to celebrate all the small wins and to keep a record of them. So that might be you came up with an idea, or you did an outline, or you did some character work, you finished a chapter, you finished a whole first draft. Maybe someone gave you some great feedback, maybe like an editor or critique partner, somebody in a group you're in, said something really nice about your work. Take note, because our brains definitely like to look for the negative, and they will look for the times that somebody criticised your work, or you didn't like your outline, or you didn't finish what you set out to write. So take note of all these wins because they all count, and they all prove that you're a writer and you're doing fine. Take a note of them, and you know, put them in a folder on your computer, take some screen caps. Sometimes it will even feel a little arrogant to do that. Do it anyway. Nobody has to know, only you have to know. It's not that you're going to go and tell the world if you don't want to, but just to keep a note of all those wins, revisit them, remind yourself of all the little wins you've had on your journey as a writer. Another thing you can do if you don't want to just do like a notepad on your computer, actually get a physical glass jar, write down your wins, put them in the jar, pull one out every so often, remind yourself what you've achieved. Train your brain to look for the ways in which you're succeeding as a writer instead of the ways it thinks you're not. So tip number 5 for dealing with imposter syndrome as a writer is just to let yourself suck. I mean, it's so freeing to just let yourself suck sometimes. I'm going to get this for you. I have a little note on my computer, which you probably can't read, but it exists, which says shitty first drafts are love. Because they are. Because you don't get the polished draft that you like without the crappy first draft. It's like you can't bake a cake without the ingredients, you know? So it really helps to give yourself permission to suck sometimes. That can be because your first draft is rough, or sometimes you just, you know, do some free writing, scribble some stuff down and don't worry about whether it's good. Because despite what your brain is telling you, nothing bad will actually happen if you write some crappy prose. You don't have to show it to anybody. If you think there's something in there, and often there is gold in there, sure, you can edit it, you can, you know, show it to a critique partner, you can see what you can make out of it, but you don't have to. The world won't actually end because you wrote some prose that was less than stellar. Let yourself suck sometimes. Just remember that it's part of the writer's journey. If you talk to another writer and they tell you their writing never sucks, I'm sorry, they're lying. Every other writer will have at least a handful of stories of that time they wrote something terrible, because it happens to us all, because it's still writing, it's still practice, and it still does get you where you want to go eventually. So give yourself permission to suck. It can be really powerful when your brain starts kind of saying to you, oh, that sucks, you know, you did that really badly. It's so powerful to just say, yeah, you know, you're right. It does suck. That was not my best work, and I'm fine with that. It really takes the wind out of your inner critic's sails. I highly recommend you try it. So tip number 6 for dealing with imposter syndrome as a writer is get yourself into some form of writing community. Now, Writer Talk, I am on here, there a lot. Writer Talk is really nice. There's some lovely authors on there. Go on some Facebook groups, join a writer's retreat, go to a local writing group, whatever it is. Just find a place to hang out with other writers. You might need to try a few to find one that works for you. Some places are lovely. There are some places where people tend to, you know, make themselves feel better by talking down to others. Don't hang around in those places, but just find yourself a writer's community. You're going to have a couple of benefits from that. One is you are sometimes going to see people sharing stuff that they think is really rough, and it's actually really brilliant, which will help you to see that often you're better than you think you are. Sometimes people share stuff that's really brilliant, and that's just lovely. Sometimes they share stuff that actually is quite rough, and other writers will come in and help them. You may also be able to help, and you'll start to see that you can improve, that even writing that's a little rough around the edges can get better. Another really good benefit of joining a writers community is you will find that people are going through what you're going through. If you start talking about imposter syndrome, or struggles with writing, you're going to find other people that are going through it, and that sense of not being alone can help you so much, because suddenly it's not some weird little problem that you have to deal with. Suddenly it's something that all writers deal with, and you're not alone anymore. Now, second to last tip for dealing with imposter syndrome is get some good feedback. What do I mean by good feedback? I mean honest feedback delivered kindly by somebody who knows what they're doing. So that can be somebody who is, experienced working as a beta reader or a critique partner. It can be somebody in a writer's group, but somebody who knows the craft and who knows your genre and can be constructive. Because a mistake I see a lot of writers making is they go for feedback to their friends and family. This rarely works out well unless it's someone you have a great relationship with who also understands the craft. If they don't, either they're just not going to know how to help you and you're going to get something kind of dismissive, like, oh, it was good. Or they might try and help you, but the help won't be very helpful because they don't actually know what they're doing. Sometimes you get people who are quite dismissive, which is obviously not great. Don't go to family and friends for feedback. Go to fellow writers, go to beta readers, critique partners, work with a writing coach, work with an editor. Go to people who know how to give you feedback. Those people will show you what's working so that you build that confidence that in fact something's working, because that's great. And they'll also show you constructively how to improve what isn't, which builds your confidence that you can take what you've got and make something more of it. I've been working as a fiction editor for a few years now, but I've been working as a writer and editor of different genres like non-fiction, memoir, things like that, since 2008. And so often people will bring me their writing and present it to me with this tone of, it's really rough, oh my goodness, and then I'll read it and blow my mind. You are so often so much better than you think you are, so get some really good feedback. A writing coach can work with you along the way to hone your craft. An editor can do a manuscript assessment. If you haven't finished the manuscript yet, some will just do a partial assessment on what you do have to show you what's working and what isn't. That really good feedback can really build your confidence. And yes, it is scary, and you do have to have a certain level of a thick skin to do it, but you can do it. I believe in you. So my final tip for dealing with imposter syndrome is just to remember to make writing fun again. I feel like as writers, and I know the writers that I work with as an editor and coach, we often forget that writing actually can be fun, because when you're kind of in the weeds and you're trying to finish a thing, you're trying to, meet your word counts, maybe it's not going the way you hoped it would go, it can start to feel really tense and like a chore and like something you're dreading, and it's also terrible. That is not a good way to proceed. That is not going to help you get your book written, because now you're just making it something terrible. You don't want it to be something terrible. So remind yourself to actually have fun with your writing. Now, what that looks like is entirely up to you. It could be writing something that's just for fun, that isn't part of your main project. It could be writing about a side character, writing from a different point of view, doing something really silly, taking one of your scenes and writing it in a totally different genre, taking your romance, writing it as a murder mystery, or taking your contemporary and putting it in a fantasy world, whatever. Just find ways to make writing fun for you. Do some free writing, try some writing exercises. It's going to be different. I can't tell you what is going to make you feel writing is fun again, but try out some things. Make it fun. Set aside, a portion of your writing time each week just to write for fun. That might be fanfic. I love fanfic. It could be anything, but just let writing be fun again. And so long as you don't go completely overboard, it might even be buying the new notebook, but you know how dangerous that can be, so go a little easy on the notebooks. But find ways to make writing actually fun for you, because it should be fun. Yeah, of course it can be frustrating sometimes. It can be intense and deep and bring up a lot of feelings. I'm not saying that every time you write you should be, giggling, but bring some fun back into it. Stop making your craft and your story something to beat yourself up with. You don't deserve that, and the world doesn't deserve that, because if you do that to yourself, it's going to be harder for you to write your book, and that's going to mean it's harder for it to meet its ideal readers. So let's do them a service by being kinder to ourselves. I hope that helped. I hope you found that helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And if you'd like to see more about what I do and how I can help you, pop over to www.authorvoicealchemy.com and I will talk to you really soon.